Okay, well, hi everyone. Did I press the wrong button? Ooh. Oh, there we go. Great, fantastic. So I'm not going to spend an endless amount of time talking about myself because I don't have much time. So if you want to know about me, have a look on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. And if you do follow me on Twitter, you've probably seen little pixel art demons popping up for the last year or so. And you're probably wondering, Will, why have you not finished this game yet? You've been working on it for like a year and a half. So I want to talk about why I've spent so long on this thing and also why I'm kind of okay with that, because the whole like feature creep, endless development, a lot of people kind of don't like that. So how did we go about making this game? I'm making this with a friend called Matthew. We have been working on it for about a year and a half now, and we started off by saying, we're going to make a game around constraints. We're going to set constraints for ourselves, and that's going to define the identity of the game. There's a really great GDC Europe talk by Dino D, the guy who made Kickoff, which says design is constraint management. So you choose your constraints, and that gives your game its identity, essentially. So we chose the following constraints. It needed to be local multiplayer, a single-screen user gamepad, because I grew up with all these lovely local multiplayer games like Crash Team Racing, Crash Bash, all that. I love that kind of stuff. Also, I really wanted it to work on Ouya and Winatron. So that's an additional constraint of number of buttons and also technology and so on. And also, a really bad idea. I really wanted to make like a real-time strategy game. So we talked about build-up mechanics earlier. So I felt that a lot of local multiplayer games didn't really have that element. They were quite, pick up and play, which is nice, but they didn't have that kind of meaty, long-term strategy things. I wanted to give that a try. So I made this first little prototype in like a couple of weeks with like all these circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one to explain which one was. That's a kind of in-joke. So essentially you have a rock, paper, scissors. You have resources, defense, and offense. Kind of like, has anyone played Pax Britannica? Pax Britannica, it's like a one-button kind of rock, paper, scissors type strategy type game. And you're looking at what the other person is doing and trying to figure out what you should do to counter that specific thing. So you can attack. If the other person is building a lot of economy, you will attack their economy. If the other person is defending a lot, you'll build up your economy. And if they are attacking a lot, you'll defend a lot, essentially. So after 11 days, we actually showed it off at a party. We organized this party, brought a bunch of other people's games who were in the community. This was when I was in Montpellier in the south of France. We organized essentially a game night to show games. Because the trouble with local multiplayer games is they're really hard to test. It's really hard to, get enough people together that it's interesting. You need an audience. You need all kinds of things. So you need the conditions to be right. So we gave it a try on the arcade machine, which was really cool. Arcade machines are great. But there were a couple of problems with it. Oh, hang on. The trouble with it is because you were just essentially just placing things and choosing what to place, it really just came down to me saying rock, 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 and you saying paper, 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 and that wasn't very interesting. It kind of came down to like a kind of war of attrition between paper and rock, and that was kind of boring. So there needed to be something a little bit more interesting, a little bit more control. Where you put things needed to be more interesting. So we kind of redid the game completely in terms of gameplay and presented it again actually at a trade fair. Because of some weird system of friends and things like that, we managed to actually show it at a trade fair like 24 days later. So that was a completely different game from there. And this time you could actually grab guys and move them around and so on. And you had a limited number of slots to put things in. Whereas before you could just put stuff everywhere, so you ended up with just this carpet on each side of the screen of my stuff and your stuff. All my rocks and all your rocks, all your scissors or whatever. Which wasn't very interesting. So that was nice too. But what's kind of problematic about it is in order to have you choose what option you were doing, a rock or a paper or a scissor, you would essentially be opening up like a modal menu because, again, we wanted to limit the number of buttons. So you'd have like a button to open up a menu, and then you would choose in that menu what you wanted to do. And that's really bad for like accessibility because if people want to pick it up and play, they press a button and they go into a different mode where suddenly like the inputs that they're sending are no longer doing the same thing. So that can be kind of confusing to people. And then they need to somehow figure out how to get out of that mode, so they need to cancel. It's kind of like not too nice. And then also, again, unless you're a kind of nerdy real-time strategy player, and a lot of the stuff that I'm saying may not make sense immediately because the context that I'm speaking from is someone who knows what this kind of game is. And I see a lot of kind of confused faces. So I'm trying to go quickly because I only have 5 minutes, but we're used to games where you control an avatar, you move it around the screen. We're not used to games where you have a locus of control that is separate from the objective that you're supposed to be defending or whatever. So that can be hard for people to conceptualize if they're just picking it up. And also the game was really slow to start because there's, again, this kind of notion of build-up. And so that can be really hard to pick up and play. So you can see that the constraints we set ourselves at the beginning, that we wanted these build-up mechanics, we wanted it to be strategy. We're just hitting up against them constantly as we try and make this local multiplayer and we try and make it accessible. We want people to be able to pick it up and be able to understand it. So we redesigned it again completely from scratch for Join, and that's actually where Join comes in. So Join, again, was the first time I playtested the new version. Did away completely with all the modal stuff, so everything became contextual. So you have a button, and that button will do something based on where you've positioned like an avatar. So you're moving an avatar around, and if you're standing next to thing A, pressing X will do a rock, and if you're standing next to thing B, 1 minute? Okay, cool. Nice. So I'll try and go quickly again, Okay. You guys need to, all right, cool. So I'll try and go quickly. So we moved the locus, basically the locus of focus to an avatar because it was too confusing to say, you have to defend this thing and this is who you are, kind of like in like a MOBA or something like that. It's too hard to pick up and play. It was still really confusing though. Contextual menus are even worse because you lose that kind of one button is one verb. If X does something different when I'm here than when I'm there, that's even more confusing. So that was actually worse. And if you're controlling a cursor with a gamepad, that's terrible as well. So it's all kinds of horrible things. So basically, since then, we've been trying to make Adrian be less confused. And we've tried a whole bunch of things, all kinds of weird ideas that I can explain if you want. Picked a few of them, actually showed it off at PGA in Poznan. And now it's starting to get a little bit more interesting. People are actually starting to get into it. So we showed off at a maze as well, which some of you may have seen as well, and playtest again. And gradually that it is kind of starting to get there. So the demo I'll show Join today hopefully will make some sense to some people. I'm really hoping because, goodness knows it's been a year and a half or so of confusing the hell out of everyone who tries the game. So yeah, now what? Well, we may well be iterating until next Join, but the constraints we chose in the beginning were hard, and we really want to try and make it work, so yeah. Thanks for listening. I think I have one more. Ooh.